Okay.
Here we go.
Okay. All right. So now, Autumn, we have to watch what we say
Yeah.
because people will start. We're still about 2 minutes out from our official start, but people will start filtering in.
Okay.
So,
Do you want me to be on mute before until I talk?
you don't have to, but you can.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I will. All right. Let's see. If you are all joining us, we've just got about 2 minutes and we will get started with today's webinar. All right. Just one more minute here. Looks like we still got some people filtering in. All right. Fantastic. It looks like we're just right at 4 o'clock here and lots of people have joined. So welcome to our Thursday webinar series. Before I introduce our distinguished speaker today, just a couple of introduction items. If you are joining us for the first time, we are Crow Canyon Archaeological Center, a nonprofit research and education center here in beautiful Southwest Colorado near Mesa Verde National Park. If you are joining us, we are on Zoom today. You may also be joining us on Facebook. This is our first time since we had some glitches a number of months ago that we are back to streaming on Facebook Live. So if Zoom gives you a headache, you can hop over to our Facebook channel and jump on. You can also come back and watch any of our webinars on our YouTube channel. So please subscribe if you haven't. If you have questions during the presentation today, if you put them in the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom window, then we will be sure to get to them. We'll keep an eye on the chat, but sometimes things can get lost in there. I'd like to start with some acknowledgements. Crow Canyon acknowledges the Pueblo, Ute, Paiute, Diné, and Jicarilla Apache people on whose traditional homelands our campus sits. With the work that we're doing at Crow Canyon, we seek to bring light into the darkness of memory that these lands, waters, wildlife, and her descendants hold as a result of policies of removal, genocide, and displacement. We seek paths that support and align with Indigenous people and communities. And with gratitude, we honor the contributions of present-day Indigenous communities, descendants, and the colleagues with whom we partner who help guide our work and mission every single day. Thank you. And another big thank you to all of you who support Crow Canyon and especially our webinar series, which is entirely free to the public. And it's because of all of the generous donations that all of you make. Thank you so much. And also a huge gratitude moment to the founder of our webinar series, our dear friend and colleague, Taylor Hasbrook, that we lost this year, but she is always with us at every webinar and every day in our work. So thank you to Taylor and thank you to all of you who support this amazing program that she created for us. We have, you might have seen on our social media and on our website, we also lost this year Bill Leip, distinguished archaeologist, friend, founder. Many of us would not be here without Bill's guidance and scholarship. We are holding a celebration of life on campus for Bill on September 6th, and just wanted the family wanted us to put out there that people are seeking any stories, letters, photos, any reflections that we might share at his celebration of life. So you can reach out to any of us on the website, and we also have a special email address, lipcelebration@outlook.com, if you have any questions, and to RSVP if you are able to come. Our annual report is out for 2024. It's really good this year. There's a lot of really fantastic stories about everything that we did in 2024 and the status of the organization, some amazing photos and stories from scholars and partners and staff. So please do take a look at it at this QR code. It's on our website as well. some programs coming up. If you would like to spend some time with us in person and not just digitally, there's still some seats left on our short workshop, the 3-day Indigenous Foodways, here coming up soon. We have a Glen Canyon trip in September and then down in Southern Arizona in November. So go ahead and jump on this QR code if you're interested. Lots of information on our website to join us for some of our late summer and fall programs. Some great webinars coming up. So we have on next week, August 14th, really interesting discussion around advancing practices to support ethical data management in archaeology. Huge issue right now being explored. And then the week, there isn't a webinar on the 21st of August, but jump forward to August 28th, and our dear friend, Georgie, oh my gosh, I'm gonna say it wrong. Autumn Weiss.
Pangyesva.
Georgie Pangyesva, incredible Hopi scholar. She will be talking about her views on archaeology, so you definitely do not want to miss Georgie. Thank you, Autumn. So that is an excellent start to my introduction of our speaker today, our friend and colleague, Autumn Gillard, who is the Cultural Resource Manager for the Paiute Indian Tribe of Utah. She earned her bachelor's degree in anthropology with a minor in psychology from Southern Utah University and is currently working on her master's degree from New Mexico Highlands University in Cultural Resource Management. She is a maternal descendant of the Cedar Band of Paiutes, which is part of the Paiute Indian Tribe of Utah and also shares a Ute and Shoshone Bannock heritage. Autumn specializes in cultural awareness, tribal diversity, and inclusivity. She has expertise in both cultural and applied anthropological studies and the benefits of cultural reconnection. She also specializes in Southern Paiute astronomy and ethnobotany. Thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your knowledge with us today, Autumn.
Yes, of course. I'm so happy to be here with everybody and teach a little bit about Nuwu astronomy and give a deeper perspective about Southern Paiutes and how we view the celestial objects. So it's going to be great. Let me go ahead and get the presentation going. So can everybody see that? Yeah.
Looks good.
Okay, great. So just as a cultural formality, it is very common for most Indigenous tribes that we introduce ourselves in our language and we give you our family lineage. So I'm going to start the presentation off like that, and then we'll get into some information about the universe from a Southern Paiute perspective. So Mike West de Guvinyavan, Nunu Mipian, Delphina Edmo Ichaip, Nan Chuch, Surutsing, Nunu Mikagu, Nola Zuniga, Nurat, Surutsing, and my great grandfather was Nober Zuniga from the Cedar Band of Paiutes. So what I said to English, or translated to English, is hello friends, my name is Autumn, and I give you my maternal lineage connection to the Paiute Indian Tribe of Utah, which is through the Cedar Band of Paiutes. So as Liz mentioned, just a little bit about my bio is, I did receive a bachelor's degree from Southern Utah University, majoring in anthropology, minoring in psychology. I actually did complete my master's program, so I do have the degree now in cultural resource management. I am the lead author and researcher for the Pipe Spring National Monument International Dark Sky Association application. So I was able to get Pipe Spring National Monument certified as an International Dark Sky Park in the spring of 2021. And I gained my passion for the sky through my traditional cultural teachings from my mother and grandmother, as well as my mentor, Mr. Ben Pickavit, who I am so graciously thankful for him taking me under his wing and teaching me also what he knew or knows about Southern Paiute astronomy. So I just want to start off with a little disclaimer, and this is just if anybody has any questions at the end. So not all information of the night sky will be shared. Some traditional knowledge must be kept for only the Southern Paiute Nation. This is done to help in the protection and preservation of our cultural knowledge. And if you work in areas where you speak about Southern Paiute star stories, please do not tell them out of the winter season. And even then, it's very important that you try to connect with our Southern Paiute people. Our knowledge is best shared from first person experiences and teachings, and it helps give a little bit more of a tangible understanding about where Nuwu people come from and our interpretation or our cultural interpretation of our environment around us. And there might be questions that you have that I'm not going to be able to answer, just as I mentioned, because some cultural information is private. So it's not intended to be disrespectful to anybody. It's just that, as I said, it's sacred knowledge to our tribal people only. So, Native people as astronomers, a lot of individuals that don't know a lot about Indigenous people, they can't fathom the idea that Indigenous people were astronomers. And this is something that has been happening since the beginning of Native people's existence upon our ancestral homelands, and since we've been interacting with our cultural landscape. And so, we, through our traditional knowledge and teachings, this is how we achieve the ability to be scientists before Euro-Americans arrived on the North American continent, Central America, and South America. And this includes not only astronomy work, but botany work, hydrology, architecture, and many other fields. So our scientific views are critical for teaching our children and our youth that we have a place in fields related to science. And that's something that I get really passionate about, is being able to teach our younger generations that traditional ecological knowledge is one and the same, and that we can really have a spot in fields of science or social science.
Hey, Autumn, I'm sorry to interrupt real quick, but
Yeah.
the slides are not advancing, and folks,
Oh no.
I don't know if maybe you want to hit full screen mode and then advance a couple of slides. We're still on the first one.
Sure. Okay, hold on one second.
So I
There we go. Hold on. Can you see him now?
Yes, you're not quite in full screen mode. I think if you go to the bottom right of your screen, there's a little projector icon there. And if you're almost there, that's it.
Okay, now can everybody see?
Let's see. Now you're on the disclaimer side, but it doesn't look like it's gone to full screen mode yet.
On my end, it's on full screen.
Oh, that's so weird. Well, that happens. Well, I don't think it matters as long as the slides advance. If you make sure you click the slides forward. So now we're on Native people as astronomers.
Okay, Can you see this one? The methodology of research collected.
Yep.
Okay.
All set. Perfect.
Okay. We'll leave it in this mode, and then folks can see.
Perfect. I'm so sorry.
Okay. No, you're good. You're good. I'm glad somebody mentioned something, because I don't want to just be rattling on and they're like, "Where's the slides?"
Yeah.
Right. So just a little bit about the methodology of how we started to collect the research for Southern Paiute astronomy. So in the past, most of the information collected pre-1950s was collected in the manner of ethnography work. Oral history oral interviews, and engagement in tangible experience to translate into cultural understanding. So, of course, a lot of this work was done by early anthropologists and archaeologists that are interacting with various Southern Paiute bands. One of the most famous anthropologists that worked with the Southern Paiute people was Isabel Kelly. And so she has some documentation about Southern Paiute astronomy. So I would say more predominantly her is where she's mentioning astronomical work. The only problem with some of the work in the past is that when it was being translated or recorded, it was being done from a Euro-American mindset. And at times, early historians or early social scientists, they're shifting the knowledge to fit the views of American society. Because it's very important to remember with Southern Paiutes, how we tell stories is not just an oral expression. There is, body language that goes with it. And we speak very candidly about, different spirits or, animals or deities, or even humans that are in these stories, and how they live so openly and freely. And then during that time, a lot of the early anthropologists felt like, that they had to kind of tone it down for American society to be able to digest it. So presently, what I did and what some of my team had done is that we took an Indigenous archaeological perspective theory of interpreting our cultural landscape as a resource that we currently and prehistorically interact with. So it was really taking our contemporary mentality, but also reverting it back to pre-contact history and understanding what did this environment and what did this landscape look like to our ancestors? What were they thinking and what were they seeing when they were looking up at the night sky? So for me, what I did is I utilized an applied anthropological perspective by gaining research and putting it into action. So as I was being taught stuff from my grandmother, from my mentor Ben, or from other various elders throughout Southern Paiute Nation, I would take that information, like for gardening. So if I learned something about different moon phases or different seasons on how to tell when we're getting those changes through different celestial objects, I would go out and I would plant a garden, and during or according to those celestial timeframes, to see, what did it look like in action. We also did a lot of researching past articles and oral histories for reference, because we wanted to take those articles, even though that they may have been mistranslated, and kind of cipher through them and be able to interpret them from our cultural perspective. So it was really utilizing our ethnographic tools, for interpretation of past articles, but also when we were speaking, to current elders that are alive, and teaching ourselves and them how to utilize a tool that we typically didn't use in our culture or our community. So the interpretation of the solar system from a Southern Paiute mindset, is really being able to view and translate the sky through two different mindsets. So something that I learned from, my mentors and my elders is that, we as Native people, we're consistently walking in two worlds. We're walking in the mainstream society, but we're also walking a very fine line with our traditionalism and our culture. And how do we marry those two together? But upon joining those viewpoints together, how do we teach others about us by joining those forces? And so that was really the mentality of kind of creating like a third eye experience, if you might say. And we really, really had to know, myself and some of my team, my interns that worked with me, was starting to learn our traditional stories. I was privileged enough to be taught in home by an elder as a child, growing up traditional stories. And so it was very easy for me to connect to. But also understanding the importance of cultural connection to all creations of our universe. So really understanding that, like, we are just one small piece in the universe, and that we are working with this larger connection, and what is our purpose within it. And that understanding that we, all of us humans, every living being on Mother Earth, is a part of a whole circle that continues to move in energy, and that we are people of the stars, that we have pieces of stardust in us, and we are moving in that continued energy. But most importantly, establishing a connection to our ancestors as contemporary Native people or Native persons. I think that that was the most important aspect that I gained, from becoming an expert in Southern Paiute astronomy, was that me as a contemporary Paiute woman, I was able to establish that deeper connection to my ancestors. So the image that you're seeing on the slide, you see a lot of, this this swirl design all throughout the Colorado Plateau, Great Basin, Southwest. And for many different tribes, we have different interpretations. So something that I was taught by my grandmother was that this is actually an interpretation of our galaxy, the spiral galaxy that we live in, and that our ancestors already knew our position in the greater universe. And so there they was depicting it through rock writing and through different panels. So the Nuwu, or the Nuwuvi universe, the Nuwu universe is designed around a 13-month calendar year, counting 13 moons as 1 year. And most of our constellations appear in the winter months. And so, I've reached a point now where I have established a Southern Paiute planisphere. And this is a really early design. So this one is available for general public to view because this is something that is not currently utilized and went through proper consultation for Southern Paiute band approval. But as we were establishing this Southern Paiute or Nuwuvi universe, I kept hearing from different community members and different mentors and elders that we wanted to express the importance of including each of our Southern Paiute bands, all of our sister bands, would have a place in this universe, in this depiction, and that we all have unique interpretations of constellations. So when you think about Southern Paiute people, we have a very large cultural ancestral landscape that we cover. And a lot of people assume that because we're all Southern Paiute, we're all the same, and that's not true. That even within our bands, we're very unique. And you could see it in the interpretation of the night sky. So with the design idea of the Nuwu universe, the idea is to include representations, like I said, of each sister band. And we also wanted to break up the Nuwuvi universe into a cycle, into 4 seasons that included the animals, the mountains, the plants, our traditional songs and dances that are connected to these 4 seasons. So that is some of the information that is held privately within our community. And this is something now that we're able to continue to teach and pass down to our generations, identifying, the 4 directions, the cardinal points and these seasons and every aspect that's connected to them, as well as different astronomical viewpoints. So we're going to go ahead and hop into some of the celestial objects and their interpretation. So the first one, is one of my favorites. It's the sun, and his name is Tava. And so he is a male personification in Southern Paiute astronomy. He is the husband to the moon, and we have many traditional stories that connect the sun to the cottontail rabbit. And unfortunately, since we're not in the winter season, I can't go into full star stories or astronomy stories. But I will give you a little teaser is that, when you see the cottontail rabbit in the Colorado Plateau or on this, in the Southwest, a lot of times you'll see that dark line that runs down his back. It was because he offended the sun and a solar flare was thrown at him and it singed his back. And so all the descendants of the rabbit have that little design on them. But the sun, of course, is always honored in prayers. We always face the eastern direction. And, we have cultural beliefs that we should be up before the sun. And we actually have, some sayings in our traditional language of that if you're not up before him, he will shoot you in the butt. And so you got to be up so that you're not a lazy person. But, we also have viewpoints about eclipses. And that for some of our Southern Paiute bands, it is taboo for them to look upon eclipses, to witness them. And, I can think back to my younger years. And I remember one time I was out in my driveway with my telescope and, I had a solar filter on it and I was getting all geared up to watch a solar eclipse. And my grandma came home and, she chastised me pretty hard and she said, "What are you doing?" And I was telling her, I said, "Well, I wanted to watch the solar eclipse." And she said, "You're not supposed to do that, that the sun and the moon are in an intimate moment at that time and they deserved their privacy and my respect." And so that had always stuck in my mind of how much we respect these, astronomical viewings, these actions of the universe, and that it is much greater than us, than that we are as humans. So we also, the Milky Way for Southern Paiutes is very important to us. In our language, the Milky Way is translated as Mohompoam, which means the spirit road. And so the Milky Way, that we view in the night sky as Paiute people is the path that we follow to the spirit world after we finish our journey here on Mother Earth. So it's actually a trail that we walk across. And for many different bands, they have different interpretations about certain celestial objects that set along the Milky Way. But one of the most common thought processes and connections to the Milky Way is that the brightest stars that rest along the Milky Way, they are the campfires of our family members that have passed on. And so we believe that, Creator allows our friends and family members to rest upon the Milky Way, to look at us in our waking lives. And so it's just a very comforting thought for many of us that have experienced loss, to be able to go out, look up at the beautiful Milky Way and see these great bright stars, and to feel that connection of that, they're still able to see us in our lives. So another one that's very important to Southern Paiute people is Ursa Major. And in our language, we refer to this constellation as Nagats, or the bighorn sheep. And as I say right here, it is a personification of the bighorn sheep. And I included an image of a petroglyph, because all throughout Southern Paiute territory, you see predominantly bighorn sheep everywhere. And for some depictions of rock writing, it is a connection to astronomy. It is a connection to traditional stories. Other times it is not. But the bighorn sheep is very important to us in our culture. And it is seen as a spirit animal or a medicine animal who is powerful and significant. And the bighorn sheep, depending on what band interprets, considers this constellation, to spring from Ocean's woman's pubic hair. So Ocean Woman is a deity within our culture. And this is a viewpoint of mainly Southern Paiute bands in Nevada. So the Dipper in the Milky Way is his wife, and they were separated far in the heavens because they fought on Earth when they were living beings, and it caused them to be separated. So a lot of our star knowledge and star stories are also life lessons. They teach us about how we should portray ourselves as Paiute people. And this particular teaching is teaching us that, we should try our best not to quarrel with our significant other, because we don't know what could happen in life and that would cause us to be separated. And we don't want to leave each other in a negative way. We try our best to work with one another and be productive in our relationships. So we have Ursa Minor, which is basically like the little brother, of course, of the Big Dipper, and Polaris, the North Star. So this constellation is referred to as Nok, also another personification of the bighorn sheep. And so from our cultural viewpoint, you can interpret the Little Dipper as kind of like, this little brother of this great big brother who is like most courageous. He's like, everybody likes him. He's, this guiding light. And we have, the Little Dipper, who is also fearless. He's courageous, but he's also very boastful with his actions. And so when you hear traditional stories about him, he is portrayed as this great, great figure. And you see these beautiful red cliffs in our area. And in our stories, we are taught that, he climbs so high and he ends up getting stuck in the sky. And Creator feels pity on him, or excuse me, he climbs so high and he gets stuck on a cliff. Creator feels pity on him and grabs him and tosses him in the sky. And he identifies him as a guiding light for travelers. And so we see him as once being an earthly being that turned into a higher level spirit. And so this is where you see in our culture that the bighorn sheep becomes more than just an earthly animal. He becomes an upper echelon figure within our cultural landscape, within our cultural viewpoint, and he becomes very revered for us. He is also a favorite of Creator. He's one of his most loved sons. And so we in our lives are taught as Nuwu people to be like the bighorn sheep, to be courageous, to be fearful in all that we do. I would say that one thing we are taught not to do is to be boastful, that we are always taught to be as humble as we can be. So another constellation that we have is Lepus. And so Southern Paiute band interpretation looks at this constellation, and you see different viewpoints coming from different Southern Paiute bands. So for the Las Vegas Paiutes, they view this particular constellation as a porcupine. Our Chemehuevi brothers and sisters, they view the constellation as a badger. Other Southern Paiute bands view this constellation as a hare or a rabbit, like the Greeks. And, I always thought this was a really great comparison, because a lot of times, individuals, they'll take Indigenous people and they'll put us in this little box. And then, we have all of these other great cultures of times past or pre-contact, like the Egyptians, the Greeks, and they'll say they're so advanced and they did all this. But when you look at this comparison and you look at these cultures who are oceans apart, when they looked up at the night sky, they were seeing similarities. And for me, that makes it really humane. That is proof to me that culture is universal. It will transcend across many, many different groups. And I think that that's a great reminder for us today, that no matter what walk of life that we come from, no matter what culture, what race, religion, or whoever we are, we can find similarities and we can find connections. And one of the great ways to do that is through astronomy and the night sky, and learning about it with each other. So the last constellation that I have for you all today is my absolute favorite, which is Cygnus. So Cygnus in our language is referred to as Chukach, which means the duck. So this constellation was first recorded by Isabel Kelly in an interview with a Las Vegas Paiute tribal member in 1932. But this constellation was also taught to me by my grandmother. And I remember sitting with her and asking her, what is that cross up in the sky? And so she had set me down and she had told me this wonderful story about this constellation. And this is another one where you can see a great similarity. So Cygnus, the swan to the Greeks, is a distinctive cross-shaped constellation, best seen in the northern hemisphere during the summer and the fall. So it is a celestial waterfowl, and it swims through the river of the Milky Way. So just like the Greeks were seeing it, the Southern Paiutes were also seeing a great waterfowl in the duck, and that he, kind of swims and guides people through the Milky Way. Ducks are also connected to traditional stories in partnership with coyote. And ducks are known in stories to sing very beautiful songs in their own ceremonies. And when they were living beings, depictions of like humans almost, that they had the most beautiful regalia and they were beautiful dancers. And in the story, Coyote kind of stumbles upon a group of ducks celebrating in ceremony. And of course, as we know, Coyote is a trickster. And he comes along and he starts eating these ducks, and he finally gets to the last one, and he's tossing, and he tosses this duck in the air, and Creator grabs him and throws him in the sky. And as he gets tossed in the sky, his feathers burst and they fall ever so slightly to Mother Earth. And so in the winter time, when we see very large, fluffy snowflakes, this is a reminder or signifies the duck's feathers falling from the universe. And so it's always a reminder for us of the sacrifice that Chukach gave for that winter snow but also to be that waterfowl that guides spirits through the Milky Way. So I think that we will probably open up for some questions maybe. But I wanted to say thank you and show my appreciation to my team that helped me work on this. My intern, Mary Hill, another intern of mine, Miss Winona Tongates, my mentor, Mr. Ben Pickavet, of course, the Southern Paiute Nation, my Southern Paiute elders, my family, and all of you and others that acknowledge the preservation of the Southern Paiute people and our culture and our history and our heritage. So in our language, we say ayuk for thank you. So thank you all for listening in. And I think I'll go ahead and stop my share and see if we have time for questions.
Yeah, definitely. Autumn, thank you so much. That was fantastic. What a gorgeous presentation. And I love ducks are kind of my favorite too. So I love that you ended on on a duck slide and a duck story.
Yeah.
Um, somebody was curious, kind of going back to like almost your first slide with the rock imagery with the double spiral. Someone had noted that, oh, it looks like each spiral is counterclockwise of the other. And I was wondering if there's anything else you were able to share with us about the spiral imagery.
Yeah, so for some of the Southern Paiute people, the spiral imagery is also known as a water glyph. And so depending on like the ending of the spiral, it can be an indication of water resources. And so that was another interpretation that some bands have. So that could be an indication maybe why they're facing different directions, is because they're showing directional points to different waters.
Really interesting. Is there, and then it was really wonderful to see the slides with the kind of juxtaposition of the astronomy and the rock imagery. And I was wondering if you could speak a little more to some of those connections between the rock imagery in general and the astronomy.
Yeah. So I think one of my favorite places that I have really seen this really great example of the depiction of the rock writing to astronomy is a panel in Glen Canyon. And it's down by past Horseshoe Bend. And it's a depiction of bighorn sheep. And when you look at the design very meticulously, you can see that they're making a description of the Big Dipper, but out of bighorn sheep. And so I've always been, yeah. And so I've always been super curious to go down there at night, if I ever get the chance, and to sit by that panel and kind of compare it to the sky. And so, you know, it's just really great to be able to like mirror it to scientific imagery, to traditional, you know, writing, so that folks can get that symbolism.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Bighorn sheep making of the Big Dipper. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder if the folks doing our Glen Canyon trip know about that one. I'll have to share that little nugget with them.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing. Amazing. We have a question from one of the viewers that asks, are there traditions around solar and lunar cycles and planting or ceremonial cycles?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we plant our gardens after the full moon in June. And that was one of those viewings that I took as an applied anthropological perspective. And so it was amazing because it was, you know, of course, the ancestors, they knew everything. They already knew how the environment was operating. And so, you know, we were taught after that full moon in June that then you would begin to plant your traditional Three Sisters garden. So it would be a monsoon garden. And of course, it was during that monsoon season. And so you're catching all of that rainwater. So definitely watching that lunar phase is very important. You know, the moon in itself is very significant to women. She is a female personification, and she is connected immensely to Southern Paiute women. And some translations in our language refer to her as grandmother. And so she cares for us and she watches us and she tends for us. So, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Let's see. Oh, we have a question of someone wondering if you'll be giving this presentation again sometime in the future. It will also be on our YouTube channel, folks,
Yeah,
if you want to
but
go
there's
back and
always
watch
a possibility. Yeah.
it. I was curious about the ethnographer Isabel Kelly that you talked about, and were able. It seems like you're able to find some useful historic information. How was her work viewed in the communities? Do you think past or present? Just kind of curious what the
Yeah.
community feels about her.
So I think that, for some people, of course, there was negative opinions because, she was coming into community, she was extracting information, and we have to remember the time frame and that, it's early years of anthropology, and anthropologists a lot of times were not very kind to tribal people. But I think that thumbing through her research that she did a pretty okay job. She actually learned to speak Southern Paiute fluently. And I
Wow.
believe that she came out to our territory in like an old T model car. So she was driving all over by herself in the desert, meeting people, living in our villages, learning our language, being immersed in the culture. So I think that, there must have been a piece of her that she really did like us. She was very fond of our ancestors. Yeah.
Wonderful. That there's a real appreciation and not
Yeah.
not just appropriation of that. Oh, that's good
Right.
to know. I'm sure all early anthropologists were not created equal, so I'm sure some were did better than
Oh yeah.
others. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the viewers says you mentioned how cultures in Greece also identified the rabbit constellation or Ursa Major and Bighorn sheep. Are many of the Paiute constellations using the same sets of stars as Western astronomers observed, or are there other unique arrangements? Maybe more meaning.
No, you know what? That's the interesting part is they're using the same stars. And that's where I was like, this is amazing because like I said, people oceans apart from each other looked up and they still seen the same thing. Like for us, you think about Orion facing Taurus. For us, it's a warrior with his bow stretched out facing an antelope. So they still seen like a horned animal, and still was recognizing that it was a male figure facing that other constellation. So super cool.
That is really, it is kind of a cool humanity, sort of
Yeah.
thing. All of us together in some ways. That's really neat. Let's see. So one of our questions is, can you say more about the dark skies and the locale related to Paiute area communities?
Yeah. So I think that a really great achievement amongst the Southern Paiute Nation is for the Cedar Band of Paiutes. The Cedar
Okay.
Band of Paiute Indians are the first tribe in the world to designate their ancestral homeland as an international dark sky community. And
Wow.
so that's the reservation that I reside on. And we have some of the most pristine night skies on the entire Colorado Plateau. And so, it really is a reflection of how much the night sky means to us as Paiute people that even today, there are our sister bands, there are tribes out there that are advocating for protection of night skies. They're advocating for low light pollution, and they're doing everything that they can in their community to ensure that that cultural resource will always be protected.
No, that's spectacular. Let's see. Now questions are coming in hot and heavy, so give me a second here
You're
to find some of them. Okay. Someone noted that you mentioned eclipses. Can you speak to feelings about comets or meteor showers? Because there's one coming up next week.
Yeah. So I know we're on Facebook Live, but so I'm gonna give you guys the translation in Paiute for a comet or a meteor or a falling star. So in our language, it's referred to as Putsiv Kwachup, which means poop star. So
I
we
think you
have
can say that on Facebook. That's okay.
yeah. Well, I was going to say the other word, but we believe that if we look up at them, that it will poop in our eye. And so we're taught not to stare up, and because it will fall in our eye. So
that makes perfect sense to me,
yeah.
actually.
Yeah, but there are ancestral writings and depictions of comets that have passed through our area. So we do have that in our ancestral landscape.
Oh, wow, that's really neat. I think it speaks to the interest and passion you're generating here, that we've got a couple of questions about, like, in the dark sky designations, are Paiute astronomy based visitor programs offered at any times?
Yes, so I quite frequently partner with various public lands,
Okay, cool.
national monuments, national parks, national forests, and I go out and I give constellation talks and tours. So a lot of the stuff that I do is by hand with laser, rather than with using big telescopes or whatnot. And so, I think that just kind of watching, you might see like an advertisement. I'll periodically go to Grand Canyon, Zion National Park, Cedar Breaks, Pipe Spring National Monument, Bryce. So all throughout Southern Paiute territory, I will once in a while go and give programs. So be on the lookout for it.
Awesome. One of our folks asks, besides the sun and the moon, do Southern Paiute recognize planets as male or female?
Yes, Venus. Venus is a
Oh,
depiction of a female. And Venus is referred to as Butsiv Dava, which means sun star. And if anybody else, and there's probably lots of other astronomers that are in attendance today, as we all know, that Venus is one of those celestial objects that we look for a lot when we're viewing the night sky, to be able to either calibrate telescopes or to be able to start to distinguish when are other planets going to start popping up. So yeah.
oh, cool. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Um, Sort of another question about how interested folks are. One of our viewers asked, have you written a book or a paper on this topic that's accessible to the public? Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Not like you have anything else to do, Autumn, I know.
Right. Well, my entire thesis was on Southern Paiute astronomy, but I have not made the decision to release that information publicly yet. But I think that in the future, I might write a book, but like you said, if I get time,
Right.
I'm a pretty busy person, but it would be great to like even create like a pocket handbook for folks to be able to like look at, Roman Greco on one side and flip it over and see Southern Paiute on the other.
So yeah, no, that's absolutely. Oh, and speaking of that, thank you so much. I think we'll go ahead and wrap up there, because people don't know, but Autumn came down from a fire to come down and do this presentation for us, and I want you to get home safely tonight. But really appreciate the extraordinary measures you came to do this, and for sharing the knowledge that you shared with us, and for sharing about things that can't be shared, which is a huge teachable moment that people need to understand as well. So, Autumn, it's always so wonderful to see you. Thank you so much, and we hope to work with you again soon.
Of course, you all have a wonderful evening. It was my pleasure to help educate and teach. So have a great night.
Thanks, Autumn. Take care. Drive safely.
Yep. Bye.